Just play the classes that you really enjoy. There's always going to be classes that look better on, DPS meters, on healing meters, but if you play a hybrid class, a lot of the hybrid class utility is extremely strong. That doesn't show up on the meters. MC or Molten Core raid in general is really easy. A lot of the future raids, in my opinion, are going to be very easily puggable. There's still going to be, certain coordination required, but honestly, just play the class that you really enjoy. Hello guys, and welcome to my new video, and today we'll be talking about class diversity and class population in World of Warcraft Classic. We'll be talking about raid composition for Molten Core. We'll be looking at some of the DPS and HPS numbers. We'll be talking about server faction imbalance and the census information that happened or was released a couple of days ago. And basically this is a discussion video, so let's get to it. So first of all, we'll be seeing information, we'll be seeing charts about the server population. Before I'm going to start talking about this, I want to do a little small disclaimer about how this, DPS, HPS and all of this kind of rankings work. It's not really needed to run the most optimal classes for Classic World of Warcraft, and I don't want this video to be, hey, this is the best class, you gotta go with this class, or this is the only viable class, this is the best healer, this is the best DPS and all that. I don't want that, because anyone who's watched any of the Molten Core runs, anyone who's done the Molten Core raid, they know it's extremely easy with the current Classic World of Warcraft patch. It is easily puggable, you don't have to be level 60, so basically you don't have to play the most optimal classes, because I feel every single spec, every single class in Classic World of Warcraft is completely viable, and I'm sure you can do Molten Core with 40 druids if you want to, but it is still interesting to see how the classes are performing. And this here is not class performance chart, it's class and race distribution. So this is across all of the servers in the US and EU. If you want to see how your server is performing in terms of the server imbalance, in terms of Horde and Alliance, you can see these charts. These are really nicely put together. I can look at my server here, Nog and Fogger as well. I can see that, okay, the imbalance between Alliance and Horde is it's not too bad. And you can also go to the US and you can see the same thing. So I'm gonna leave all these links in the description, things like that, if you want to check it out. Keep in mind, this add-on that was used to generate real player information has been broken by Blizzard. The function /who has been reduced, and it's a very vital function for this add-on to work. So basically this is the only snapshot that we have of the server faction imbalance. And that's the only thing that we're going to have, because again, Blizzard broke it for whatever reason, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conspiracy theories out there. Maybe Blizzard doesn't want to see if the population is going to dip, maybe they don't want to see the comparisons between Classic and BFA, whatever. You can make your conspiracies about this, but again, if you're playing in a PvP server, it's very important to, know what the balance is, because it's never fun to be ganked by Horde all the time as an Alliance player in a population server where Alliance is really underrepresented. So again, really cool information. But if you look at some of the class distribution, you can see no big surprises here. Warriors, 16%, arguably one of the most popular class in Classic World of Warcraft. Mages have become really popular, and that's probably because of a lot of media attention coming towards, the world first mage and things like that, about mage AoE farming, and certain people don't like it, but certain people are drawn to this optimization. So overall, mages have become really popular. You can see rogues is still very popular. Priests overall are a very wanted class, and then you obviously can see faction specific classes like shamans, which have a 6.2%, and then paladins, which have 6%. Again, they're never going to be that popular because you can only play shaman on Horde and you can only play paladin on Alliance. It is kind of sad to see that druid is that underrepresented, because druid is available to Horde and Alliance, yet their population numbers are relatively small. Arguably the least represented class in Classic are druids, which, again, if you're playing a druid, I'd love to hear your opinions about this. Now, there is a very cool Reddit post about MC Molten Core class representation. Now this is very cool because it kind of showcases the DPS, tanking and healing representation in terms of which healers are the most popular. It's not telling you which healer has the best HPS or whatever. It's not going into all of that number aggregation or anything like that. It's just looking at how many priests there were. So you can see that priests are by far the most popular. Again, no surprise, priest is available to both factions. You can see that paladins are quite popular, and you can see shamans are also very popular for the horde side. Now you can also see the druids, which are available to both sides. Again, like I mentioned before, druid is definitely the underdog in classic. It is, like I mentioned, least represented class in terms of classes that are available to both factions. So again, I would love to hear your opinions about if you are playing a druid. If you look at tanks, it is a very obvious chart here, because a lot of the videos that people were doing before Classic release, they were just saying, you know, warriors are the most popular, warriors are one of the best DPS, warriors are one of the best tanks. And if you look at the census information in terms of the most popular class, warriors are probably the most popular. So it makes sense that majority of the tanks in Molten Core are going to be warriors. There is still some druids in there, and there's no protection paladins at all, because again, why would you play a protection paladin who doesn't have a taunt in raid scenarios when you have that many warriors? But I would love to see more protection paladins in Molten Core, because it really isn't a hard raid. A lot of people will compare Molten Core to something like LF4, because the current iteration of the patch of Classic World of Warcraft, the raid content is not that hard. There's a lot of information about it. Honestly, it's more about just getting 40 people than just optimizing the right classes. So if you look at the DPS, it's linked to the world population. Again, you see a lot of mages in MC, and there is a reason for this, because a lot of the mages will level the fastest. That's just generally how it goes. Mages can AoE farm solo, AoE farm dungeons, and they'll probably reach level 60 the quickest. And there's a lot of mage representation. You can see warriors as well with 21%. You can see rogues as well. And then after that, you kind of have a little dip in between the warlocks and the hunters. And surprise, surprise, a whole 2% is dedicated to your hybrid DPS. So that is a Shadow Priest, that is a Feral Druid, maybe Boomkins, that is Elemental or Enhancement Shaman, and that is a Red Paladin. So that's 2% of MC's class representation is taken up by these hybrid specs. So you can see that the stigma is still there. If you're playing a Paladin, you probably will be forced to heal. If you're playing a Shaman, you'll probably be forced to heal in MC. Even though MC is really, like I mentioned, I'm repeating myself, it really isn't that hard. So if you look at the actual DPS and HPS numbers, so this is the DPS for Molten Core, and for people who are new to my videos, they'll be like, what is this chart? This is real player information. This is aggregated by Warcraft Logs, one of the best sites to do with class balance in retail and things like that. And they have aggregated the numbers for DPS for the overall all bosses. So this is not simulated, this is not private servers, this is real players playing World of Warcraft Classic, going into MC and doing numbers. And if you want, you can go boss by boss and see the damage as well. But the general consensus, if you're looking to top DPS, warriors and rogues are pretty overpowered in terms of DPS. Now, there is a difference between melee DPS performance between Horde and Alliance. If you're playing Horde, having a Shaman in a group with Windfury Totem is extremely good, and it's gonna boost your numbers as a melee. It's kind of buggy to some extent. You can see there's 2 DPS rogue specs, and if you look at the parses, so this is how many people parsed. You can see that the most popular spec at the moment, or class at the moment, is mages, followed by warriors and rogues, and then warlocks and hunters. So it's the same kind of information, but you can see that there is 2 rogue specs, and it's a bit of an issue because if you actually go to the top ranking DPS, let's say you go to Gehenna's, because Gehenna's is the first boss where you start seeing double rogue spec. And if you go to Gehenna's, you can't really differentiate between, if I go to the certain DPS, I want to look at the DPS, you can't differentiate between the different specs of rogues. You only have DPS rogue. So it might be a bug, or I might not be reading this properly, but let's assume that it is just one rogue spec at the moment, or a variation of the rogue spec. So it might be a little bit buggy. To the same extent, you can see here right now, oh, you see Druid DPS here. and the Druid DPS icon is balanced Druid. And this is not true because they're not balanced Druids. A lot of them are feral, but again, if you go to the same extent and you try to differentiate between the different DPS specs for Druids, you can't. So again, they're all kind of put together in the same row. If you're looking at the logs, again, this is very, very similar to what the private server formation was gathered like months and months ago before all the videos appeared about the class balance. Warriors are doing strong, rogues are doing extremely well. If you look at the overall bosses, it's the same kind of deal. You can see hunters are doing pretty good, you can see mages are doing alright, and then you see the hybrid specs where you have your DPS shamans, DPS paladins, and DPS druids. Shadow priests are actually topping out of the hybrid classes, but again, if you look at the parses, there is actually a decent amount of shadow priests. There is not a whole lot of DPS druids, not a whole lot of DPS shamans, and there is not a whole lot of red paladins either. So again, there is a stigma attached to what role you're going to do as a certain class, even in a raid that's relatively easy. If we actually try and go into the healer performance, you'll notice that the healing in the 75 percentile, it is relatively okay. Holy paladins are doing really well. You can see shamans are doing really well. Again, priests are doing okay, but if you look at the parses, majority of the parses are from priests. Again, that's to do with the fact that they're available to both factions. But you can see that the healing balance is alright. Druids are probably a little bit down in the 75 percentile. That basically means that if you're healing relatively okay, this is the kind of numbers you're going to see. If we look at the 99 percentile, which means if you're healing at the maximum top performance, the balance is pretty alright. Priests are topping, paladins are there, shamans are there, and druids are a little bit at the bottom. But basically what this tells you is that if you're an average player going into MC, you're probably going to be doing really well as a holy paladin. If you're a really good druid, you'll be topping meters anyways. If you play a class okay-ish, you can still see good numbers as a paladin. If you play a class really, really well, you'll do well regardless. And again, there is a big differentiation between what kind of healer roles you're going to have in Classic. It's different in terms of you're going to have a tank healer, you're going to have a raid healer. Like for example, Holy Paladins are very, very good tank healers and they can be assigned to tank healing. Priests can be assigned to tank healing if there isn't enough tank healers available. So it's really going to depend on what kind of HPS numbers you're going to see depending on what role you do. Like for example, if you're a Restoration Shaman, a lot of the times you'll be forced to do AoE healing. And if you look at the top ranking Resto Shamans for Molten Core, for the Gehenna's fight, we can look at their healing performance, we can go into their spell breakdown, and you can see it's all chain healing. So chain heal becomes your core spell for raid AoE healing as a shaman. And if you're a priest, you might be forced to do single target healing. So it's really, really kind of hard to determine what's the best HPS and stuff like that, but because of the different roles. But the general consensus is that just really play the class that you really enjoy. In my opinion, a lot of the raids are going to be puggable within the first couple of weeks. It's more about getting the bodies out there. As a hybrid class, you're bringing so much different utility. There's a lot of classes here that might not be performing well in terms of DPS or performing well in terms of healing, but their class utility is extremely strong and they're really, like, you know, helping the raid and things like that. So I don't want people to look at these logs and be like, I gotta play a warrior, I gotta play a rogue, I gotta play a holy paladin or whatever, or a shaman. Just play the class that you really enjoy. But also these charts, what they kind of showcase is that there is still a stigma attached to playing these hybrid classes. There's only 2% representation in these charts for the hybrid DPS. So a lot of the times, even though MC is easy, you will be asked, hey, do you really want to play a red paladin? Why don't you go holy? Holy paladins are so strong. So it's going to be really hard to shift away from that for the time being. I hope that people will play these hybrid DPS specs more. I hope that they enjoy the classes, and I'm going to be doing a video like this for retail. If you're playing retail, if you're playing mythic, check out my next video. It might make a little more sense in terms of prioritizing certain classes. If you're playing classic, don't worry about the spec that you're playing. Don't worry about the class you're playing. You might be asked to play the more popular classes or more popular specs for raids, but you really don't have to. You really don't have to do that in order to beat the boss. Enjoy the journey, enjoy the classes, but at the same time, it's also interesting to see the numbers that certain classes can output and things like that. So thank you guys for watching this video. I will be uploading a new video for retail. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe. It helps out the channel a lot. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in my next guide.